Namaste, everyone. I'm thrilled and honored to be in conversation on 75 years of India's independence to celebrate the last girl, and that too with NGOs who are part of the constructive action in the struggle against sex trafficking. And I could have found no one better to have this conversation on the importance of the last girl and change starting from the bottom and transforming the top, and the importance of constructive action than Gloria Steinem, whose whole life epitomizes this. Gloria, you have always taught all of us, as we went about our work, that grassroots action is integral to whatever we do. Why do you believe that?
I should explain that India made me what I am today. I hope India is satisfied. When I first graduated from college, I was engaged in trying to not to get married. Okay, that was right. Also, my mother and both my grandmothers had been theosophists, a movement that really originated in India. And for all of those reasons, I fled to India and lived there for 2 years. And that changed my life. I mean, for forevermore, with friendship, with philosophy, with a much better understanding of how most of the world lives than I would have had I stayed here. Of all the errant and peculiar decisions I've made in my life, that was the most crucial, to live in India for 2 years, and I'm very, very grateful.
What was it in India that you experienced which led to your firm commitment to grassroots action or constructive action?
Well, of course, when I was there, it was much closer to the time of Gandhi, and that was very clearly a grassroots movement that had brought independence and, everything we know. So I had that experience, and it was, of course, the contrary of much that I had learned in college in terms of change starting from the top down instead of from the bottom up. And it was just absolutely more true. I mean, because a tree does not grow from the top down. It grows from the ground up. And so does change, revolution, transformation, human understanding, all of it. It just had an enormous, enormous impact on me. And when I came home, of course, the civil rights movement here, which was also very inspired by the Gandhian movement in India, was going full force. So it just was, I'm sure each of us in the audience has had life-shaping experiences of this kind, but that was the most important one for me.
In previous conversations, you've told me about how you went from village to village in India, and you learned from the women in a train bogie, and then from a group leader who was taking you to quell some caste riots, and he didn't care whether you had white or brown skin. What did you learn from that experience?
Well, it just happened. I mean, I had been living in Miranda House at the University of Delhi, and I realized I should not stay only in Delhi. So I have, in that way that young people just do without any idea of whether it's a risk or not, I just got on a train, a kind of Indian train that's familiar to lots of people here, in a women's car. There were, and maybe still are, women's cars, right? Eating food from peddlers, that we negotiated with in and out of the windows and all of that. And I just kind of submitted to this travel, and I ended up going to an ashram that was one of the ashrams of Vinoba Bhave, and he was just then, there had been caste riots in Bihar, very tragic and dangerous riots, and he had been sending out teams of people to travel through the villages and just to let people in that area know that anyone outside cared about them, really. And he always needed at least one woman so that women would come to the meetings around the campfire, around the fire at night. And he was fresh out of women. So even a Westerner, right, would do. I said to him, isn't this going to seem very odd, to people? He said, no, you wouldn't seem any more odd if you came from New Delhi. Right. So that was a transforming time for me, and for one thing, the villagers were so generous. I mean, we had a cup, a sari, and a comb. That was all I had, and we depended on the villagers to look after us, to feed us. We slept on mats. We talked around the fire. It was. I can't express how transforming it was, because I wish I could remember exactly the phrases, but as he said to me, as by way of encouragement, if you want to talk to the people, you have to listen to the people. If you want to understand the people, you have to live like the people. If it just was an organic, principled part of organizing. Very, very opposite from the top-down form.
And you have often told me, as we march on the streets against the great injustices that we are seeing in our countries right now on race, on caste, on gender, and also authoritarianism in different forms, that civil disobedience must be matched with constructive action on the ground. And I want you to explain to so many activists who are in the room who are doing that why is it important to match civil disobedience with constructive action on the ground, which is community service?
Well, civil disobedience is very important, but it's also negative. I mean, so it demands for balance a positive acts. Not only what do we not want, but what do we want, however small those things may be. What's an example? Okay, sitting in a circle. It's already very different, and I still do this in my living room, and probably a lot of you do too. When you're having meetings, to sit in a circle instead of at a boardroom table, which has a kind of hierarchical implication, and to assume that everyone is going to have a chance to speak and everyone is going to have a chance to listen. I mean, I thought I discovered this in India, but Wilma Mankiller, who was the chief of the Cherokee Nation here, once came to a meeting in my living room, and she said, oh, well, when we do it, we pass around a talking stick so that everyone has a chance to speak, and everyone, I mean, this is universal, I think, of original cultures.
But how do we tackle the growing erosion of democracy, or even the rising authoritarianism and fascism that we can see in so many of our countries, just with constructive action, because, you know, if I'm at the grassroots and trying to get a woman or a child to school, or a woman to get linked to a bank account, and in the meantime, the entitlements like low-cost food and housing, which the government had created for her, are being cancelled, then how can I do any of that constructive action? Isn't it better just then to march on the streets and yell against the government?
Yes, no, it is. But marching against the government is very important, especially if Trump is in office. Right. But it is not an immediate change. You know, courtesy of all of this and living in India, I remember saying to myself, I live on 73rd Street, right? So I thought, okay, how can I do it here? Well, how about talking to the first person you see after you leave your door? So the first person I saw was my mailman. He turned out to be the political boss of Queens. He became, you know, a great colleague in political organizing. I mean, just, you know, to take a chance on it and see what happens.
Yes. And what are the tips that the feminist movement could give to all the people who are now trying to stand up to authoritarianism, which has raised its ugly head both in America and in India? In America, of course, it rests on racism, and in India on casteism, and both are, of course, based on us normalizing hierarchy at home, because it's at home when we are born, we realize that it's all right for one class of human beings to order and one to obey. And we normalize hierarchy when we go out into the world and keep trying to replicate it, thinking it's normal. So gender is the one which digs a trench into our brain, into which all other hierarchies fall of race and caste. And then we choose a head of the state who's like the head of the family, who's bossy, right or wrong, and continue. So how can we tackle this?
Well, I think you just said it in what you said, you know, because the patriarchal family is the institution that accustoms us to the idea that hierarchy is normal, and therefore democracy in the home accustoms us to the idea that democracy is normal. So a family in which if there are male-female parents, both are caring for the children. If whatever the financial support of the family is, both are earning outside the home. It's just kind of very, very, very basic. And I think when we are in our college and university classes, we think it's amorphous and out there someplace, as opposed to starting in the family and in our neighborhoods and in who we see every day. Telling us that we have to start big and up there is a way of telling us we can't start, if you know what I mean. And it makes a huge difference. For instance, just to listen to children so they know they're worth listening to. It happened that I had, within my own family, some of this already because my mother and both my grandmothers were theosophists, a lovely, peaceful philosophy that started in India. So some of it was there already. It isn't as if my mother was then not subject to patriarchal problems in the larger world because she was a journalist. She had to give up the work she loved the most. You know, there were many things that happened because of the external hierarchy. But there was, at least from her and from my grandmother, who was my paternal grandmother, who was also a theosophist, this idea that democracy is organic and listening to each other. I mean, only listening to kids tells them they have something to say. I don't know if this will impress you or not, but I remember saying when I was very little, and I asked my father for a nickel or a dime or a quarter or something, and he said to me, "What for?" And I said, "You can give it to me or not give it to me, but you can't ask me what it's for." And to his credit, he said, "That's right." And he gave it. So, you know, I don't know how old I was, 5 or something like that. So it just is present in the way that we treat each other and our children and try to evade, subvert the hierarchies around us.
You know, but a lot of young people I meet nowadays, especially when I teach, they say democracy is the great hypocrisy. And it was used and hijacked just to make rich people richer. And why do we need democracy? Because it's hypocrisy, so we should just go in straight for authoritarian leaders. What would you say to them?
Lots of luck. No, I mean, it isn't as if we are perfectly practicing democracy. It's something we work on every day in terms of listening to each other with respect and conferring on others the basic rights that we ourselves desire and need. It's not a perfection. It's a way of life, and it is that on which, I mean, when this country did not listen or allow to vote the people of color in this country, it was so not a democracy. It still isn't. There is still a lot of discrimination based on race, on gender, on class. But hopefully we are moving, yearning toward treating other people as we would like to be treated.
My last question, what does freedom mean to you?
Oh, what a question. This is...
That's the last one.
What kind of question is that? What does freedom mean to me? Well, I mean, it's not just individual, because we are communal. So it means freedom to speak, freedom to love, freedom of association, freedom to use our talents. When we arrive in this world as an infant, we are a unique human being already who has unique skills, and so, you know, and it's the ability to use that and to treat others, and empathy has to be part of that, right? I mean, that's so crucial. We have to do our best to treat other people as we would like to be treated.
Thank you. And that was my conversation with Gloria Steinem.
The Last Girl Awards was introduced in 2017 to recognize those fearless leaders that really live the values in uplifting those who are neglected and shunned by society. The global leaders that we select are those who share this vision and apply their resources, time, money, skills, and network to stand by the last girl with courage, passion, and commitments. This year's awards will mark 75 years of India's independence with Gandhi's voice to recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man or woman who you may have seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use to him or her. Our honorees, as you saw today, Ruby, Tatiana, Kendall, and Chloe, truly exemplify Gandhi's twin values of ahimsa, or nonviolence, and antyodaya, or the upliftment of the last person through their work and activism. We are honored to stand among them today. I would like to present our first award of the night, the Lifetime Leadership Award, to Ruby Sales. Public theologian, historian, activist, social critic, and educator, Ruby Nell Sales has always looked to her work as a calling rather than a career. As a teenager, she joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, working on voter registration, and has continued to be a strong supporter for change. Having an educational background from Manhattanville College, Princeton University, and Episcopal Divinity School, she founded the NGO Spirit House Project. Teaching at colleges like Morehouse, honored at the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, speaking at TED on the pains of racial division, and organizing events for racial justice, urgently signifies Ruby's leadership aim towards advancing democracy and nurturing hope. On a personal level, I met Ruby several years ago at an event, and there was a spark. I can't explain it, but we knew we were destined to be in each other's company. Since then, I have invited Ruby to speak at my children's school, to come over to my home for an afternoon tea, which went over 5 hours long because nobody wanted to leave. And this past year, Ruby was honored to be at the Whitney Biennale in a video presentation on her life by tremendous artist Adam Pendleton. And I was featured in a small video part, so I can actually say I was at the Whitney Biennial. And this year, in January, Ruby is part of a civil rights documentary called The Lowndes County and Road to Black Power, which featured in the Tribeca Film Festival and will open in January on Peacock. So please watch it. It is an absolute honor to present Ruby with the Last Girl Lifetime Leadership Award. Ruby can't be with us today in person, but her dear friend Nancy Talbot is here to accept on her behalf, and I invite Nancy to share some words with us.
It's an honor to be here tonight to accept this award for Ruby Sales. We've been dear friends for 40 years now, and over those years, she has been an activist the entire time, as you heard, since being a teenager. And she's worked for all people, social justice for all people, but also in particular for women. She has held events such as Stop the War on Our Children, where she brought mothers to Washington, D.C., whose sons and daughters had been killed by the police. She started a database called Breaking the Silence, which includes state-sanctioned murders since 2013. All her time as an activist, she has frequently referred to Gandhi as a guiding light, because at the heart of the SNCC movement and the heart of what she calls the Southern Freedom Movement, which was really a movement for freedom beyond a movement for civil rights, she's, I'm sorry, I lost my thinking. She has always been someone who has said that nonviolence is at the heart of what we all need to do in all of our organizing. It's also an honor to be here tonight because my father, Phillips Talbot, was a former president of the Asia Society. He was the one who moved the Asia Society from a small place on East 64th Street and had this building built, and this beautiful building we're in. He knew Gandhi. He visited him in his ashram. He walked with him in Noakhali. He met with him 6 weeks before his assassination, at which time he asked Gandhi what he saw. And Gandhi said, "I just see darkness all around me." He was very depressed, and my father always felt that he knew that his end was coming. But my father was also part of that movement of trying to tell the world what was happening. He was in meetings with Jinnah and Nehru and Patel, and in the Indian National Congress meetings, the All-Muslim League meetings. And he was always talked about Gandhi in terms of someone who was willing to take the time with people, to listen, and also to talk with people. And he was always amazed that after a time of a prayer service, Gandhi would sit and talk with the journalists who were always there, trying to hang on every word, to just listen so that Gandhi could tell the world what they were trying to do in India. So this is a very special evening, and I'm very proud to receive this award for Ruby Sales. Thank you.
I am deeply moved and deeply honored, Ruchira, to be a part of this great work that your community, that the international community, that you're spearheading, are beginning to look at the question of women's bodies as sacred and not as commodities, to be peddled and to be sold. And as an African American, your work takes on deep meaning to me, because as I look at the whole question of sex trafficking, I'm deeply concerned about the relationship between the fallout of colonialism and oppression and the destruction of relationships, and how this has impacted women, put women in very vulnerable positions, where a tradition of commodification and the degradation of women's bodies continue. So I just want to applaud you for doing this work. And in today's world, where we're all trying to be more than just disposable waste that exists for other people's pleasure. So thank you again for this work. Thank you for your caring, and it is a great, great honor and a great pleasure to count myself as part of this great international congregation of women who are saying not anymore, not now, not on our time. Thank you.
It is such an honor to be here and to present the Last Girl Award to Tatiana Kotlyarenko, whom I have worked with for many, many years and know so well. She is a woman of tremendous commitment and courage. Tatiana Kotlyarenko is the advisor on anti-trafficking issues at OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and ODIHR. I'm afraid I'm not going to get that acronym right, but it has human rights. It ends with human rights very prominently since 2016. She worked on the very influential, important second edition of the national referral mechanisms, joining efforts to protect the rights of trafficked persons, a practical handbook, and addressing emerging human trafficking trends and consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as providing technical support and capacity building to combat trafficking in human beings to OSCE participating states. I had the tremendous privilege of attending one of those early meetings, preparing the national referral mechanisms document in Warsaw, Poland, where Tatiana is based. In response to the ongoing armed conflict in Ukraine, which especially impacts women and children, as we know, Tatiana is conducting rapid assessment missions and providing recommendations to countries on how to prevent and address trafficking of Ukrainian women and children. So I have this wonderful award, and Tatiana cannot be here this evening. She is, to the best of my understanding, back in Poland, but I believe she has a message for all of us.
It is a particular honor today to receive this award from Apne Aap International, and especially from Gloria Steinem, who has been a true hero for me and has inspired my work since on this issue since I was, really a teenager. This award goes to the courage and the resilience of survivor leaders who have taught me everything that I know about sex trafficking and how to actually go about, changing this. This also goes to my mentors, my support group and cheerleaders, the radical feminist movement. And especially actually my friend Liz, who's no longer with us today, who was herself a survivor of sex trafficking and who has taught me for many, many years what it means to actually live through such experiences and its impact on any person. I would like to also thank my family, my parents and my sister who are there with you today, my husband and my children, especially my 5 daughters for whom I'm also committed to fight this fight because I want a better world for all girls. So thank you very much. And once again, I want you to cheer for the survivor leaders that are there with you today, because their courage and their fight against trafficking, is what's what encourages and leads the way for us every day. And just on one last thought, I came to U.S. as a refugee girl. The level of vulnerability all across was so significant. And I've seen many such girls actually fall prey to trafficking right there in New York. I could have also when I was 15 and just got lucky. So let's all fight together this fight to make this world free from sex trafficking for all the women and girls that surround us every day, and for all other women and girls who do not have a voice to fight. Let's be their voice. Thank you.
And a wonderful development. Tatiana's sister, Tatiana Kotlyarenko, is here to accept the award on behalf of Tatiana, and I believe to speak with us for a few minutes.
Tatiana said it all, but I'd like to say what an honor and privilege it is to accept this award on her behalf. Tatiana has worked tirelessly to help individuals that have been trafficked, and I know that she will continue committing her life to this cause and make an even more significant impact than she has already. And my family and I are extremely proud of all her accomplishments. And I know that she would have loved to be here in person, but she couldn't make it. She's currently in Warsaw, Poland. So thank you.
One last award, I believe, to an extraordinary activist leader, survivor leader, Kendall Alimo, the Changemaker Award. International activist, professionally trained artist, educator. Having survived child trafficking and re-exploitation, Kendall Alimo has continuously worked to advocate for the innovation of ethical clinical care for complex trauma survivors, so urgently needed. During her address at the 2021 United Nations General Assembly high-level meeting on combating trafficking in persons, she stated, "Let's come together, let's work together, and let's bring these survivors home." Kendall Alimo initiated the global hashtag Seats for Survivors campaign, where red seats were gifted to institutions and individuals to underscore the significance of survivor seats in all spaces for true social inclusion. Combating the dehumanization and commodification of humans is the mission of Kendall and her organization, which is underway at the Red Seat Foundation. It is such an honor to present this award to Kendall Alaimo.
I'm going to start off with this quote by my favorite female artist. Some of you might know her, Yaoji Kusama, and she states this: "I wanted to start a revolution using art to build the type of society I myself envisioned." As mentioned, I am an artist and am known for using my iconic red seats. To me, these seats really symbolize the anti-trafficking movement overall and our collective commitment to ensuring the human rights of freedom for all across the globe. The seat was inspired by my own journey and my own pathway to my own freedom, being a survivor of child sex trafficking and reexploitation. I gift them to institutions, companies, and individuals who are doing incredible work in this space, including Ruchira Gupta as a recipient. We really urgently need these seats in so many spaces. Survivors don't nearly obtain freedom upon exit. They need psychological services. And I'm going to tell you where these seats are urgently needed around the globe, known as Seats for Survivors. So these seats are actually needed in ethical treatment centers for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder and dissociative disorders we see in this population. These seats are needed at academic institutions around the world to educate survivors. These seats are also needed at corporations that are willing to save a seat and employ a survivor and give them a career and not just a job. In a career that is both trauma-informed and, if needed, disability accessible. I've never said this publicly. I live with a disability. But there's ability in that, right? And last week or so, I had the very honor to gift the very first seat to the very first corporation to talk about survivor employment, and that was at Amazon headquarters in Seattle. You know, I had a thought today many years ago, and I won't get into my quite long story, but I put on some sneakers and I ran around a university. And I was determined to get to school. And I told my friend Jen, I said, should I put on my sneakers and run in protest? She said, I don't know if that's a great idea. I said, I'm going to put them up, lace them, and I'm going to start running. Well, I never made it to school. And about 2 years ago, I was walking the lakefront in Chicago where I live, and I turned to my friend Terry and I said, Terry, should I send a seat to a university to start talking about this needed access? She says, I don't know, you can give it a go. And these seats have been sent around the world, around the country, to the Congo, in India, Germany, all around the United States, and it's really been wonderful. And I'm traditionally a painter and a visual 2D artist, but this has been a really nice performative project that's ongoing, and you can look up hashtag Seats for Survivors. But to me, it's really performative. In the color red, I chose to really symbolize life and blood and in the survivorship and what it takes to sustain life after you endure trafficking. And it was interesting, when I was here in New York last November at the United Nations, I got a message on my inbox from LinkedIn, and it was Ruchira Gupta. And she said, can I see one of those red seats in person? I said, okay, sure. So I put one under my wing, walked to Ruchira's office, and I gifted her one of these seats for her incredible work in this space, and it's such an honor to be here to support both her and Apne Aap International's incredible and life-saving work. But When I went to her office, she offered me soup, and I smiled because she feeds so many people. And, I'm here tonight to accept this incredible award, but people that know me know I don't always like to just receive. I also like to give. So last time I gifted Ruchira a chair, and she gave me soup and books. And tonight I'm getting an award, but I'd like to give something to Ruchira tonight that I brought with me to give. And we really can't underestimate art's ability to solve the world's most pressing problems. And when I went to visit Ruchira the first time, she said to me, Kendall, I've been an activist for many, many years, but I really want to embrace being an artist. And I said, that's funny, Ruchira. I've been an artist for many, many years, but I'd really like to embrace being an activist. So as an act tonight, I'm going to gift Ruchira one of my paintbrushes from my studio. And encourage you to keep making art with impact to make the world a better place, Ruchira. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderfully, there is one more Last Girl Award, which goes to the extraordinary Chloe Flower, the Cultural Change Award. Chloe is an accomplished pianist, composer, and producer. Chloe has co-produced and composed for Celine Dion, Johnny Mathis, 2 Chainz, Sway Lee, NAS, and more. Additionally, she has scored Misty Copeland's documentary, A Ballerina's Tale, numerous works by Kevin Hart, including his newest streaming show, Heart to Heart, for NBC, and original compositions for Champagne House Krug. Chloe is dedicated to humanitarian efforts through her work as an ardent advocate of anti-human trafficking, a champion of music education and therapy, an artist ambassador for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and Grammy showstopper. I believe Chloe is here tonight to accept this award.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be in the room with all these incredible women and to be given this by someone I respect and honor so deeply. Thank you. My speech is really going to come later in the night through music, but I did want to say one thing. Thank you so much, Ruchira, and everyone here for recognizing music education as a tool of prevention against human trafficking. I have seen firsthand how learning an instrument can teach our most vulnerable youth identity, dignity, community, empathy, and so all of these things that overcome material poverty and can really prevent them from entering both the supply and demand side of human trafficking. So thank you.
Thank you, Chloe and Kendall, for being here. And we are missing Tatiana and Ruby, who can't be with us, but they're doing the work out there. And of course, COVID has changed the equation about who can be here and who can't. My questions to both of you are, and I'll start with Kendall and go to Chloe. The first question, which I asked Gloria too, what does freedom mean to you?
Yeah, that's obviously a very big question. And, I love what Gloria said about community. It's not just one person. I think as an artist, it means creating fearlessly and courageously to drive art in the world, to create impact for these pressing issues, and to just be able to express yourself. I think that as an artist is freedom to me, but like Gloria mentioned, it's community. And there's a quote I always say, and if you've seen me talk before, I'm sorry if I've said it before, but I'm going to say it because it really goes back into this community and what I've been thinking of in terms of freedom in my own life and in my own activism lately. But a quote by Nelson Mandela, and he says, to be free is not to merely cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. And my journey to freedom can still be challenging at times, personally as a survivor and just as a human being. But when I think of that quote, like, what does it really mean to be free? And if you believe in the fundamental human right of freedom, if you're free and you're not liberating others, then are you even free, right? Can we think about that? And I think for me, my path to freedom, myself personally as a human being, is going to be indefinite, unfortunately, because modern-day slavery and human trafficking is a rapid problem that is unfortunately growing, and I don't know if I'll ever see every other person free in my lifetime, but I think there's also beauty in that, thinking that I will never be free until every human being is free, in the beauty of pursuing this work the rest of my life, in the art of pursuing, driving out pathways to freedom as an artist the rest of my life. So,
and Chloe, what does freedom mean to you?
I want to say like what you said, what she said. I'm a pianist. No, I'm not used to talking. But really, to me, freedom is really about choice. I chose music as my career because I had the freedom to do so. So for me, it's about choosing what you choose to do with your life, what you choose to do with your platform, and what you choose to do with your body. That is freedom to me.
Why did you commit to fight sex trafficking?
You know, you and I share a similar story. I walked onto human trafficking. I didn't know I wasn't looking for it. I had tickets to an airplane. I had airplane tickets to go to a beach, and I just decided not to show up. And that plane crashed, and everybody on it died. And so I had this very awakening, what am I doing with my life moment? And so I went on a walk, and I saw a brothel with young children, and I felt, as someone who had been all around the world, it was horrible that I was not aware of what was happening. And so 2006, I started this awareness campaign, because initially, to me, we needed to build awareness. Now that people know, it's about prevention. And so I made it part of my platform, part of my music, to use music as a tool of prevention.
And why did you commit to spending your whole life fighting sex trafficking?
Yeah, so the obvious would be, you know, I'm a survivor of sex trafficking, and it's impacted me and still impacts me in ways on a daily basis. I don't always talk about that, but it just impacted my identity, my path in life, and I want to make that path shorter for others. But there is a quote by Gandhi I wanted to read, since we're celebrating India's 75th anniversary of independence, and it kind of relates into the incredible work you do. But he said, "There are people in this world today hungry, so hungry God himself dare not to appear." I'm sorry, I have to reread this. I just got nervous with the Post-it. "There are people in the world today so hungry God himself dare not appear to a hungry man except in the form of bread." And when I think about this quote, I think about two things: bread and hunger, and Ruchira's work in my work. And it's incredible that you have fed millions of people through Apne Aap International. It's such an honor to celebrate that. But then I also go back to the word hungry, right? And these survivors aren't just hungry for bread. They're hungry for freedom. And they're starving for freedom. And I think my role in this, in what inspires me for this, is to provide not just bread, but pathways to treatment, education, careers, and real sustainable freedom. So that is why I do what I do.
Thank you, both of you. Your work has made a difference and will continue to make a difference, as will the work of many who are in the room. And I want to note that Jessica Neuwirth, who was one of the early activists who took on the whole issue of sex trafficking, is also in the room, as is Neha Vashi, and I can see many more, but I won't be coming back on stage now. So I just wanted to acknowledge them too before Chloe takes the stage. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Kendall.
This is a song that I wrote during the pandemic, and it was kind of interesting to try and compose and conduct an orchestra over Zoom, but we did our best. They were in Budapest, and I was here in New York. But yeah, this is called the Grand Cuvée, and it's an honor to close out this evening with this song that I wrote. Thank you.